Hi, guys. Okay, so we have been working on reading and interpreting line plots. Today we're going to read and interpret them, but we're also going to make them, which is kind of fun. So, our Walt for the day. We are learning to represent data using line plots and interpret data in line plots to solve problems. Let me make this bigger. Okay, so this solve and share is a little more difficult to try on your own because there's so much data that you would need this number line in front of you. So I just want you to read it, think about it, and then watch me solve it. The manager of a shoe store kept track of the lengths of the shoes sold in a day. Complete the line plot using the data from the shoe store. What length shoe was sold most? So here's our data in this table here. Shoe lengths sold, and they were sold in inches. So these are all the lengths of the shoes and the number sold. So 2 shoes were sold at 7 1/4, 1 pair of shoes at 7 3/4, 3 at 8, and so on. So it wants you to now take this data and organize it in a nice, neat line plot. And a line plot always gets a title. So shoe sales in one day is the title for this line plot. And they used a scale at the bottom, and it's counting by between each whole number, it's counting by 1, 2, 3 fourths. Because if you see up here, all the denominators are either 2 or 4. So it took the larger denominator because we could always make 1/2 equivalent to 2/4 on the number line. So it wanted to separate it into fourths so that everything could be represented. So let's just take a look at this. Pause me for a second. Think about what you would do to create this number line. Okay, so we are going to be using these dots, and I think I have to be smaller for this, but in your slides, you're going to have these dots as well. There are dots underneath dots, so be careful. Make sure you see this like 4-way arrow to drag it. Otherwise, you're going to make it bigger or delete it by accident. If that happens, just copy and paste a new one or make an X. We'll figure it out. But we want to plot the data. So 7 1/4 should have how many dots? 2 dots. So I'm going to look for 7 1/4. I know here's 7. So this, if it's split in fourths, this one right next to 7 has to be 7 1/4. So I'm going to, as best as I can, put 2 dots above that. Perfect. So now I'm going to look at my next set of data. 7 3/4 has 1 dot. So I know this is 7 1/4, 7 2/4, or 7 1/2, and here is 7 3/4. So I'm going to put 1 dot above that. Okay, now 8 has 3 dots. So I'm going to put 3 dots above 8. Again, I'm doing this as best as I can. There we go. 8 1/4 has 1 dot. Just gonna move that over a teeny tiny bit. Okay, 8 1/2 has 3. You know what? I'm going to just move them, and you can play with them as you go. These are a little bit big for the graph. Eight 1/4, and that's okay if they're like touching, but 8 1/2 has 3. 8 9 3/4 is my next one. So here's 9 1/4, 9 2/4, 9 3/4, and that has 3. 10 has 2. 10 1/2 has 6. 12 and 1/2 has 2. Here's 12 and 1/2. If you run out, you can just copy and paste. And 12 and 3/4 has 1. So that is how I would set up my line plot to organize all of my information. So let's look at some practice. Guided practice. Serena measured the lengths of her colored pencils. How can Serena make a line plot to show these lengths? So here's her table where she puts all of her information before she organizes it into a line plot. So we have the color of each colored pencil and all their lengths measured in inches. And it says, this is important. You can use equivalent fractions such as 1/2 equals 2/4, which equals 4/8 to help you make a line plot. So if you notice, we have denominators with 2, 4, and 8. So you are going to choose the largest denominator out of those three, which is eighths. So step 1, draw a number line and choose a scale based on the lengths of Serena's pencils. Mark halves, fourths, and eighths. The scale should show data values from least to greatest. Remember, all the way from the left, we show the smallest, and we get bigger as we go to the right. Step 2, write a title for the line plot. Label the line plot to tell what the numbers represent. The title always has to do with the information. So lengths of Serena's pencils would be the title for this one. And step 3, draw a dot for each pencil length. So now let's look at, so we took this information from this table and now made it into a line plot. It says the scale of the line plot lengths of Serena's pencils goes from 4 to 5 by eighths. Why is this a good scale to use? Well, why did we start at 4 and 5? If we look at all of our whole numbers, they all start with 4 or 5, and they're all in between 4 and 5. So we don't need any other whole number. So those are the two whole numbers we start with. And then it goes by eighths between 4 and 5, 4 and 1/8, 4 and 2/8, 4 and 3/8, 4 and 4/8, 4 and 5/8, 4 and 6/8, 4 and 7/8, and 5. And remember, we said we used eighths because it was the largest denominator, and it allows us to use equivalent fractions with fourths and halves. So it allows us to show all of the information on the line plot. So 4 and 2/8 is also 4 and 1/4. 4 and 4/8 is also the same as 4 and 2/4 or 4 and 1/2. 4 and 6/8 is also the same as 4 and 3/4. So using eighths, we were able to use all the information. I hope this is making sense. Okay, let's see. Use the table shown at the right to compare the lengths of Sandy's pencils with the lengths of Serena's pencils, shown on the previous page. Who has more pencils that are the same length? Serena or Sandy? Which set of data was easier to compare and why? So here's our nice organized line plot of Serena's pencils. And then we have this table here of Sandy's pencils. So the first question says, who has more pencils that are the same length? Okay, well, Serena has 3 that are 4 and 6/8 inches. And I only see, this one is hard to read. 6 and 1/4 only has 1. 5 and 1/4 only has 1. They each only have 1. So Serena has more pencils that are the same length. The second question is, which set of data is easier to compare? Well, right away I said that this was much easier to look at because it's nice and organized and I don't have to go searching and putting numbers in order in my head. So putting your data from a table into a line plot is always much more organized. Okay, complete the line plot. Lengths of Sandy's pencils. So now I'm going to put the dots, but I also want to create a scale. So let's look at my denominators. Oh, they are all fourths except for 1/2. But I know that 2/4 equals 1/2. So I am going to make my scale fourths. My two whole numbers, let's look. We have 6 and 5. I start from least to greatest. So 5 and 1/4. Okay, sorry. So Start with 5, 5 and 1/4, 5 and 2/4, 5 and 3/4, and 6. 6 and 1/4, 6 and 2/4, 6 and 3/4, 7. Okay, so now I am going to drag my dots. 6 and 1/4. I know 6 and 1/4 would be right here. 5 and 1/4. 5 and 1/4 would be right here. 6 and 3/4. Well, if this is 6 and 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. Whoops. 5 and 3/4. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. 6 and 3/4 again. And 6 and 1/2. So 6 and 1/2 is really equivalent to 6 and 2/4. So there is my line plot, and I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different measurements. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different measurements. I want to make sure. And again, it was divided into fourths, and I didn't need to write all the fractions because I know how to count by fourths. Awesome job. So now it is your turn to go into Google Classroom and complete the 11-2 independent practice slides. This is a new topic, so please ask for help if you need it. I'm here for you. Make sure to turn them in when you are finished. If it asks you to make the line plot, you're going to drag these dots just like I did. So good luck. Let me know if you need help.